At the dark end of the street, that's where we'll always meet.
Chris, first, thank you so much for doing this interview with me, and congratulations with the band, the Notorious Burrito Brothers, having a new album out. Right off the top, I got to ask you, because as we speak, the world is in a different place right now. How are you doing, and how's your family doing as we deal with all of this?
Well, doing all right. Before I get into it, I want to thank you for having me and appreciate the invite very much. We're like almost everybody. We're isolated. I live with my wife and a dog and 2 cats, and we're trying not to go anywhere and stay safe. I hope you're doing all right yourself.
I'm doing well, my friend. I've been hankered down, and I've been used like I get a chance to speak with you and talking about the band. I mean, the band, yourself, legends in this business. I mean, you as an accomplished songwriter, performer, everything that you can think of in this business, you've accomplished on your own. Being part of a legendary band, the same thing. I want to ask you right off the top, before we get into the album and everything else, what is it about the Burrito Brothers that members do go in, they do go out, but they all become successful? What is the magic about being with this group? And then when you go on your own, that magic seems to still rub off and still be there.
Wow. I think that part of the answer to that might be that people don't get into this group without having some degree of track record and resume. It's interesting that there's never been an audition for a band member. It's amazing when you consider how many there have been. It's the most ever-changing band that you can imagine. There's been something like 60 different members in the 51 years or so. And whenever somebody leaves, which is seems to just regularly happen, no 2 albums have had the same personnel. No 2 albums in a row have a carryover from the previous. There's always at least one guy who's changed, and then the remaining people always reconstitute the group and always know who is the appropriate fellow like when I got into the group, the first time I ever played with the Burrito Brothers was in 1986. I did a Graham Parsons tribute with them, and then again in 1987. In fact, that entry turned up on an album. So my first resume entry of having been on an album with the Burrito Brothers is 1987, and yet I wasn't a member really. I had been a substitute a few other times over the years, and always kind of knew that who was in the band. And then finally, in 2009, my turn came along where I was asked to take part in it, and it felt like a dream come true. It was something I felt I was right for and always wanted to do. I kind of thought, what took so long?
Well, I want to get in a touch of the history of the band, because people relate the Burrito Brothers to sort of like the country southern rock thing. But if you really look back and listen to the music from back in the day, it had a lot of the 60 grooves. It also had some of the psychedelic sound too.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. You already know what I'm going to ask, so please go ahead.
It's when people say country rock, I think that's misleading. That's not the right genre description for the band in my mind, and certainly not southern rock. It's more of it's a progressive rock group. It's far more than it's a country group. It's a rock group that utilizes country sensibilities, some country instrumentation. It always was. Like when you go back to the classic Gilded Palace of Sin first album that Graham Parsons and Chris Hillman did with Sneaky Pete and Chris Etheridge, they were never on country radio. They were never marketed to the country audience. They were sort of hippies. They were long-haired guys in the rock field whose whole idea was to turn on that audience to the fact that country music wasn't all narrow-minded and redneck reactionary. It had its good qualities, and Graham was a big champion of traditional country being incorporated into the rock field. So it was a hybrid, and I think even more so now with our album, which is a piece. We definitely regard the Notorious Burrito Brothers album as a whole. It's intended to be listened to conceptually as one continuous album. It's not just finding 9 songs and having enough recordings to put it out as an album. It was conceived all along as a work with an opening, very definite finale, middle portions that are conceptually realized in a progressive sort of way. So it owes more to that mindset, even though you hear steel guitars and bending guitars and fat acoustics. I would call it a rock group.
I would absolutely agree with you. And something you just mentioned I want to jump on, because, of course, we are talking back in the day vinyl. Vinyl is coming back, thank goodness, and doing extremely well. But what you just said, though, a beginning, middle, and end, have we been missing out on that in today's music, where a lot of times people, because of the way this situation is now, you can just drop a single, you can drop a single, you can drop a single, and those singles may not even actually have really anything to do with each other, whereas I can remember back in the day, and I think a lot of people would agree with that, albums told stories. Albums took you through a journey. And even if it wasn't lyrically and it was just musically, it still took you through a journey from when you dropped the needle to the beginning to when you flipped it over and ended it.
Yes, that's our concept. That's what I fell in love with. I think it was first, well, maybe not absolutely first, but certainly monumentally established by Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. And following that, so many groups continued to make albums that were a continuous, they called them concept albums. And I think that the ultimate idea of a concept album is something like Tommy by The Who that tells us a story from start to finish. But I don't think you have to go that far to still be conceptualized. I think Sgt. Pepper's does qualify as a concept album. I remember Lennon being quoted as saying, it really isn't, it's still just separate songs, but no, it's got a strain about it. It's got a sing to it that feels like, there's that opening, and then Day in the Life is clearly the finale, and it all hung together far more than previous albums, and that's our thinking, is that I love the idea of an album being a piece of work, and I know that the general public has pretty much strayed away from that. It's all the individual downloads now, and kind of returned back to, one guy likened it to the era of just the 45 single being the main mode of music. And it, in its own way, it is returned to that because people just individually download songs.
Absolutely. I just want to go over very quickly for folks who don't know about the Flying Burrito Brothers. How did this band come together?
Okay, the title of our album alludes to that. It's a tip of the hat. The Birds were, you could call them the parent group. Chris Hillman and Graham Parsons were in Birds at the time of the Birds' 6th album, Sweetheart of the Rodeo, and they both quit to start their own group because they wanted to chase that dream of incorporating those country flavors, as we were just talking about, into a rock group. And so they departed the Byrds and started the Flying Burrito Brothers in 1969. The album the Byrds did prior to Graham Parsons joining was called the Notorious Byrd Brothers, and that was a variation on Flying Burrito Brothers, which was a group that was playing around town headed by Barry Tashin and Ian Dunlop that would just have different illustrious people sit in, including Graham Parsons. And apparently the Byrds thought it might be funny to call their fifth album the Flying Burrito Brothers, and you can tell the similarity when it ended up being called the Notorious Byrd Brothers. So for years now, I've thought it would be a nice tip of the hat, sort of the insiders would get it, to call a Burrito Brothers album the Notorious Burrito Brothers, which alludes to remembering and respecting all that where it all first began 51 years ago, the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers. So it's just a nod to that. And that first album is widely regarded as a classic. The Gilded Palace of Sin is just a magnificent record.
And of course, some of the singles that was released from the album.
Yeah. There's like Devil in Disguise and Wheels is probably the most popular Burrito Brothers song of all, maybe. And then the next album had Wild Horses. It's an interesting story that they did it before the Rolling Stones.
And that's a great track, too. But, you know, you've done your own sessions back in the day. They did their sessions. I want folks today, the young folks who are listening to this whole interview, because now, of course, you know, you can record a lot of things at home, laptop, and have an electronic, you know, whatever on your board and things like that. Can you talk about what it was like back in the day to do those kinds of recordings? Because I've had the privilege of talking to many of the great legendary artists, and a lot of them talk about how a lot of times you had that one shot to get that sound, and that was it. Like, it wasn't like you could go back again and again. It was like, did we get it yet? Okay, move on, because it was a one-stop shop kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't think I have much memory of that. I think my recording career pretty much starts around the late 70s or 1980, somewhere in there. I mean, I remember fooling around with a tape recorder when I was younger, but as far as actually being in studios with producers and things like that, it was the era of easier multi-track. In fact, before we got all digital and the way it is now, they just added more and more and more. Like, you know, most of at least the first half, if not more than that, of the Beatles' career was all done on 4 tracks. But boy, when they started adding tracks, I think Abbey Road was done on 16, and then you started hearing about 32 and 64. Well, by the time you got all those tracks to work with, you got a lot of breathing room for, if you do a bad take, you just roll it back over. But in the earlier 4-track days, you had to pretty much get that performance, everybody playing at once, or else the whole thing's shot if one guy makes a mistake. And it's come a long way from there.
Definitely has, and I should know, too, because my earlier days, too, I was an assistant engineer, so I had to set up those tracks, too. So I know it's like putting that tape on and making sure everything's calibrated and the whole bit, too, you know. But let's jump ahead now, because we do have a new album out. I've had a chance to listen to it. So many different sounds, so many different grooves going on here. What was it? You kind of talked about it before, but I want to go back to it again with the Notorious Burrito Brothers. What was the thought pattern in writing this music, creating this music, and again, giving that, salute to back in the day, but bringing it to what it is today?
Well, as I said, we knew going in that we were planning to do an album that was regarded as a cohesive work. It wasn't just individual songs. We wrote the opening number, Bring It, as the up-tempo, come on in and join the party, let's go, man, kind of song. You know, I remember telling the guys I had the idea for the hook, Bring It. Actually, I think we were calling it Bring It On. And I think that phrase and that name for a song has been used enough times that we opted to just call this one Bring It to keep it a little separated. There's probably other songs by that name too, but that was our come on in, everybody, let's get going. And asked Bob Hatter, the great guitar player in this group, to come up with a sort of hot shot guitar riff to accompany it. And that's how we went about that. It was knowing that we were making an introductory tune, which is exactly what we did with the finale also. We knew it was going to be the ending, the finale of the album, and it included references to not only each song that you had just heard, but other references to just interesting things, artists and songs in the history of this music we love so much.
What was the most fun about recording this album for you?
Oh, all of it. The fact that I was working with three guys who are just consummate virtuoso musicians who all like each other and enjoyed what we were doing together. It just flowed beautifully and felt so good. It's like, wow, what a treat this is to be working at this level. I'm certain that it's the result is the best album I've ever been a part of in my life, and I think it's the best Burrito Brothers album in a long, long time.
They're gonna find us. They're gonna find us. They're gonna catch us someday. You and me at the dark end of the street. Yeah, you and me.
What are the chances, because right now nobody's doing anything, you can't tour, but are we going to have a chance that maybe there might be an online session that happens that we can get a chance to see? Do you think you guys will be performing on social media?
Not likely. Everybody's chosen to remain isolated, and I have to defer to my wife is considered fairly high risk. She has Crohn's disease. Her doctor has stressed the idea that she shouldn't have people come into the house, and she's even kind of keeping me at a distance, even though I'm not going anywhere. So our home situation doesn't invite it very well, and I don't think the others and plus I probably would have to admit I'm not too excited about getting out and going and visiting. So I think we're all just going to mind our own stuff at home until it looks like the coast is more clear. But I was thinking we could do a conceptual video. We have one. That's what we did for the tune Acrostic. We have a conceptual video that you can see on our website. We also have a very recent performance that's quite good that I invite people to watch on the website. It's we were asked to perform the classic Gilded Palace of Sin album in its entirety at last November's Graham National, the Graham Parsons tribute that's held every year in Nashville, and it was kind of an irony in a way that we had just finished this album that we feel so good about. We think it's the best work we've done, and we know that we have that at our disposal, and yet there we were playing songs from 50 years ago and none of our new material. But it was an honor because it was touted, it was billed as the 50th anniversary of that album. And even though we're not the same guys who played on that album, we are the current Burrito Brothers, and we're right for the role. And we treated it as an opportunity to continually have alumni from the group's past come join us for any given song. We had a lot of guys coming up and down. It's a nice show. The 50th anniversary of the Gilded Palace of Sin is on our website.
Definitely going to check that out. Actually, I have checked it out, but I want folks to take a look at it too. Amazing, amazing performance. As we're wrapping this up, as you said, this is a group that, do you think this group can go on for another 50 years with,
Well, I'd like to, Yeah, I think it's important not to get too self-proud. I feel that I remember, I won't name names, but there's one guy who was in the group in the middle years who objected to us carrying on because he was so sure that the fact that he's no longer in it means they're no longer real. And I thought, well, what are you talking about? You came in later. But anyway, let's not go to the negative. My point is that it's a group that's already proven that it carries on based on high degree of musicianship, people coming in who really care about keeping the legacy going. And it's already had 52 years of doing that. And I have a dear friend named Randy Harris, who is a music lawyer who has really been a patron of the arts his whole life. And he told me sometime back, he said, Chris, there's going to be Burrito Brothers long after you're dead and gone. And I find myself thinking, in answer to your question, that I certainly hope so. See, Graham Parsons was quoted as saying way back in 1973, when asked about the Burrito Brothers carrying on without any original members. Believe it or not, that was already true in 1973. Rick Roberts was leading a version of the group that had an album out and was doing live dates. They were mostly the guys who went on to become Country Gazette. And so Graham's answer to what do you think of that group going on, even though it's already not got all the original members, any of the original, he said, I think it's great. I think it should keep going, whether I do it or anybody else does. It's got to keep going. So my desire is that when my time runs out, I hope there's the next people in line.
And either way, the music's going to live on forever. My friend, I have to say, thank you so much. It is an honor to have a chance to speak with you. Thank you for releasing this album, especially now, because it's something we need. And if anything, just thank you for all the past members and you being a member right now, just for all the great music over the years.
Well, thank you very much. How kind of you to say that, and I'm very appreciative to be on your show and flattered that you would have me. So thank you very much.
My friend, you be safe, take care, and hopefully one day soon we'll get a chance to meet each other in person. I'd love to shake your hand.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, stay safe.
I will, and you too. Take care, and thank you
Yep.
again. Bye-bye.
All right, man. All right, goodbye.
At the dark end.